Our Cuse Connection series continues along. Brian Higgins here at home, and from the looks of it, head coach of the men's soccer team, Ian McIntyre, is at home as well. Mac, great to have you here. And first off, where in the world are you right now?
I'm actually in my daughter's room, so I think you can probably see over my shoulder that I think that's mini ears. So we've got some of that. Normally, I'm downstairs for our Zoom calls, but I've got a math test going on right now. So
Okay.
I've been sent to her room to stay out of the way.
That's the way of the world right now, right? I mean, the school year
Absolutely.
is coming to a close, so priorities here, and I'd say your daughter is tastefully decorated. We don't need to change anything around in there. But Mac, I don't know how many times I've said, and it's kind of lost meaning here in the last 2 months. I've said the word unprecedented about things that are going on in the world, and just when you think things can't get any stranger or worse, we've seen what's happened here in the last couple of weeks since George Floyd's murder, and now protests and everything that's gone along with that. And I kind of start with the tweet you had the other day after a conversation you had with a former player that you thought it was important to, the words that stuck out to me anywhere were to listen and learn through uncomfortable dialogue. First off, what was that phone call like for you, and how has that made you, I guess, either rethink or think about what's going on right now?
Um, so on Monday, I got a call from one of my former players, and look, as you just said, Brian, 2020 has been a pretty crappy time so far. It's been the conversation. It was an emotional. It was a very open, candid conversation. And I give tremendous. It took a lot of courage for one of my former players, I think, who'd been in conversations with other players, both student athletes of color as well as some of our white student athletes. And it really, I guess, ultimately was looking for he was hoping for some more support from me and our program. And I think he was 100% correct. Ultimately called out his coach a little bit.
I mean, we've seen out there, there's been some statements out there by, coaches or whomever, and they come off as trite and whatnot. But for you to actually have that conversation, how, I guess, important is that for your then addressing it with others that I guess where you're coming from and now is a position of having some recent education here from somebody that has deep feelings about what's going on?
Yeah, I think as a coach, the first thing we always do is we get protective, and we kind of circle the wagons. And our first thought is to take care of our student athletes. And so for me, reaching out and talking to our players individually as well as our incoming recruits, that was the first kind of plan of action. But Brian, education is the cornerstone of everything we do. And so the role of a coach, I believe, is to create an environment where we can encourage growth. And that's not just growth of our student athletes. That's me as a coach. That's my coaching staff and everyone associated with our program. So, look, I think this is an opportunity for us all to embrace the challenge individually, but as a team, collectively. And if we so decide, which I do, want to be part of an agent of change moving forward.
It's interesting, isn't it? Certainly in team sports, I mean, literally uniformity is part of it. Everyone dresses the same based on how it goes. You put on the uniform, you go out in the field, and there's an expectation that, on the field of play or whatever, you're all gonna, to some level of it, act the same. How tough is it to balance, I guess, the sports side of it with this? This is, I mean, it has to do with sport in that that's what you do, but at the same time, it's real life. It's real life and doesn't have anything to do with what's going on the field. How do you balance, I guess, the connection of those two things?
Well, I think look, I've taken tremendous pride in the fact that I feel that we've always had a very diverse locker room, a strong locker room. And so a student that's played on our team, a student athlete, a Syracuse soccer player, is a player that wears an orange and a navy blue top. And the color of the skin of the individual who's wearing that has no bearing. But we also, we pride ourselves on when, look, in a game, if one of your teammates goes down or is beaten, you pick them up, you cover for that individual. Off the field, when our teammates are going through difficulties in their personal life or at home, families, we pride ourselves on having a brotherhood that picks that teammate up. And so, look, I think that the conversation also opened my eyes that this is one of those times that I think that there is hope, but there's an expectation that your teammate, your coach, is a vocal advocate and is alongside you during these dark times. Look, we've all seen them. Look, there's been sickening scenes on our television screens. We've seen burning buildings. We've seen riots. But we've also seen some wonderful, impactful images of unity and resilience. And I think that's what I hope to get out of this from our team, Brian, is there's an opportunity here for us all to be part of the solution moving forward.
Soccer's an interesting case here when it comes to stuff like this, in my mind, where you mentioned, you look at your team, I mean, it could not be more diverse with black and white and North Americans of every country. You've had players from literally around the world, all across Europe, South America. I mean, name a country, you've had a player from there probably recently. Then, I mean, you know it. I mean, the history of club soccer in Europe, there's racist incidents which have been problems for years in some of these stadiums. So it's got to be weird with the balance where it's as diverse a sport worldwide, I think, as maybe even exists on the planet. And at the same time, there is some stuff baked into the history that you guys have to deal with.
Certainly. Look, United States is not the only country that is dealing with this currently. And you're seeing that in some of the solidarity marches going across the whole world, and these are countries that our current student athletes are in right now, and so it's on their own doorstep as well as in our country. So you're right, this is but it's something that right now I think that we can be the first part is you look internally and can we support our current student athletes, our former student athletes, and then do we choose to look, as I said to you, 2020 has been a pretty crappy year so far. And this time last week, my team was reaching out to Rocky Viegas in Brazil. He's seeing a lot of things opening up, and some of our other student athletes in other countries, maybe Germany, maybe Norway, that are starting to get some more relief. I was really worried about him because you see his body language that Brazil's entering the darkest times right now. And so as a team, we reached out individually and collectively just to make sure he's doing okay when he's very limited in what he can do. Now, a week later, as a team, it should be upon us to look internally to take care of our teammates. That look, we all, we're observing, and I'm seeing the pain, the anger, the frustration, and some of my guys are a little bit lost right now. It behooves us. It's our responsibility as coaches, as teammates, to be there, to support. And then, as I said that, and hopefully not being just using kind of sporting metaphors, but it's June 4th today. We're halfway through this year. This year's been, as I said, I use the word crappy. There's other words I'd like to use as well. But
we're on the internet, Mac. You can let it fly if you feel like it.
But look, that coaching metaphor. Look, it's half time, and the history. 2020 hasn't been written yet. It's not been written for our history books, and I'm in no way naive to think that in the next 6 months we can eradicate racism and social injustice. But can we be part of the solution? Can we move forward one step at a time, so that, when we do finalize this chapter called 2020, can it be a more positive story? And look, as I said, and I apologize for coaching metaphors, but look, I'm hopeful that that America is a second half team. I do believe of the opportunities here in America, and I guess, Brian, what I was hoping to articulate, and I don't have all the answers, and I certainly don't have the correct words at sometimes, but I'm hoping to be committed to being part of a solution moving forward.
And maybe that is the most important attitude of all, I guess, at this point, to admit that having all the answers to questions like this is beyond grasp, and working forward and seeing where we go. And Mac, you said it. We're taping this on June 4th. By the time people begin to watch this, I think in a couple of days, the world may have changed again, because who the heck knows what's happening next. If we had done this 2 weeks ago, our conversation would have started completely differently. And when we started doing this series a couple months ago, it was pretty much all on COVID-19 and what was happening and where people are. So let me ask you about that. And as the story continues to change there, you were in the middle of your spring season when everything got shut down. And now as we sit here, we are less than a week away from when student athletes will begin coming back to campus. So what is that process like right now of being part of, where at least the slow trickle, I guess, of some of your players back to campus should begin here in a little bit?
I think it's we all need this light at the end of the tunnel, and no more than right now. And so from our student athletes, our coaching staff, we are excited by the prospect of getting back. As I said, we still have some of our international student athletes who are in different spots, and I use Roque Leon. South America is a little bit behind. Well, is behind us, and the interesting thing, Brian, during this time, like that first couple of weeks was, with our international and domestic, was getting them home safely, get them back with their parents and loved ones. Then we've had these last few months of observing this pandemic through the eyes of our student athletes all over the world, and observing how Sondre Norheim's doing in Norway, and how Noah Singelman's doing in Germany, and seeing how those guys, watching Manel Busquets, one of our new guys, isolated in an apartment in Barcelona, and with a small space outside. But we're seeing those guys, some moving quicker than others, but we're seeing them get through it. It's now, as we start to see light at the end of the tunnel, and start hopefully getting some of our student athletes back on campus, and still making sure that we are supportive of all of our guys, and we want everyone to stay safe and healthy. And but yes, from a coaching perspective, is you want an opportunity to get the band back together at that right time.
And that's the hope, that everything continues proceeding smoothly, and we hear more of the things we need to hear to get things going where seasons can happen as planned, at least as close as possible in the fall. But Mac, how do you prepare for fall and the season here in June, where I assume you both have to prepare for things going as normal, but how many other alternatives, I guess, do you have to prepare for right now on top of it? Or at the same time, do you just kind of have to take it as it comes, knowing that laying things out right now may be just a waste of time, I guess, as opposed to waiting for the answer to come to you?
In the spring, Brian, we lost about a month. We lost the most important part was we lost 5 opportunities to compete, and that would have been a real, for every team, every soccer team, every spring sport, every fall sport competing non-traditionally, would have been an opportunity to play and to really learn a lot about a team. The spring's a real teaching opportunity and an evaluation process. So we lost that, but look, there's been some advantages. I think there'll be a lot of coaches that you don't want to try to do too much with your kids during the summer, but there's been a lot of positives that's come out of just staying connected, over communicating at times probably, It's also been an opportunity for us to work on our team culture. It's been an opportunity for our returning guys that they're really the cultural architects for them to embrace leadership roles and work together without the coaches. So there's been some positives from a staff's perspective. It's given us a chance to. That first part was to, we're all coaches at this level. You're somewhat on that treadmill that just keeps going and gets faster and faster, and you're trying to outwork the next person. And so to have a pause has been wonderful. But we're already, we all love routine, Brian. We do this to work face to face with our guys. So some of those things that we can work on as a staff, situational, set pieces, be a little bit more organized. There'll be some positives that we'll take out of this. I think as a coach, realizing, we all like being in the office from the first guys there and the last to leave. But I think it also, we're being forced to think outside the box a little bit now. So I think that's there'll be benefits from that as well, Brian. But we're all anxious to physically get back out on the training pitches when the time's right.
Speaking of thinking outside the box, how have you had to do that when it comes to recruiting? I mean, especially with the European recruiting you guys normally do, where obviously you can do this, you can Zoom or FaceTime or whatever with anybody, anywhere, anytime in the world, but you can't make the annual trips over there to see people in person right now.
I think that the biggest factor and the person most affected is my wife, because it means I'm always here right now, and the rest of So a shout out to the wives of the coaching staff, because they're seeing us probably far more than they would like to. My wife will be the first person to book me on a recruiting trip as soon as we get out of here. Yes, you are recreating some of it. We were fortunate this year that we did some international recruiting and brought some guys in for January. Mm-hmm. There will be challenges for a lot of college coaches and campuses trying to welcome in new international student athletes this year that are still probably working on visas and paperwork. I'm sure there'll be some challenges there. We have one incoming student athlete, a talented young man from Canada and Toronto, that I think we shouldn't have any issues with. And our biggest part of our recruiting class this year was our domestic players. But it's we're still recruiting. You are always thinking a step ahead, and everyone's doing it. So it's a case of how do you differentiate yourselves from our ACC brethren and other teams that we compete against. It's talking about and controlling things that we can. So yes, rethinking it a little bit, but we're selling Syracuse soccer and Syracuse University and these kinds of calls. So people are seeing in my, getting into my living room, and if I can't, what we'd normally be doing is I'd be in a car sitting down doing home visits. Mm-hmm. So it's not quite the same, but we just reinvent ourselves a little bit.
Or into your daughter's bedroom, depending on the day.
If they are Disney fans, we will certainly get them up here.
All right, Mac, let's wrap up on this idea. This was kind of a big thing before all this happened. After the season, you wrapped up your 10th year, and there was a lot of voting and polls, and you put out your Max XI, the Max 11, which I think you had a lot of fun with on social media. I saw you out in your driveway doing some crazy stuff one day. What was that like for you, going back, sort of reliving some of the great players you've had and trying to get this thing together?
Well, I'm very thanks. First thing, thank you to our athletic department. I thought it was a terrific idea. I think it was awesome. That's the beauty of sport. And as we're going through this, we love talking about sports. We love disagreeing. I've had Max non-11 sent to me as well. Other guys that felt that they should have been in that group, and rightly so. But no, it was a lot of fun. And what it did highlight was we've been very fortunate over the last 10 years to have some wonderful young men and some wonderfully talented players play for us. I probably should have won more games. When you look at all that talent, we should have probably won a few more games over the last 10 years.
I mean, you look at this list. You got a lot of guys on there right now that are getting, they're still getting paid some pretty good money to play soccer. I mean, obviously Alex Bono is doing great, and he's won championships in the MLS. Kamal Miller's doing national team stuff. Miles Robinson is killing it. Mo Adams, Julian Boucher, Tejan Buchanan recently, Ryan Raposo, who had the great season for you in the fall. But it feels right, doesn't it, Meg, that if you picked like your second 11, you might have a good shot against your first 11 if you decided to put.
I've got to be like, I am Switzerland right now, so I've got to make sure that I don't offend too many guys. But no, there is a very strong argument that we can. I'd pay money to come and watch that game. Put those two teams together and let them compete.
All right, we need max 22, and then we get them all in one place, and then we can have a thing.
Maybe after another 10 years, if you still have me, maybe we'll put together a mini tournament.
All right, that sounds like a plan. Let's mark that down for June of 2030, max 22 tournament coming.
You guarantee me we're out of quarantine then, and then we can set it up. We're going to do this.
Mac, after the last 3 months, I have learned not to guarantee anything for any day at any time. But June 2030, if you're there, I'm there for it. So looking forward to that. Mac, thanks for this, and hopefully we're all together somewhere out near a field, a pitch, a stadium, or something this fall when we're supposed to be. But looking forward to seeing you guys out there again.
Stay safe, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, Brian.